The father parked the car, as always, very carefully, and took things out of Miranda's trunk. "Let's go," he said, opening the door for his daughter. The girl glanced at her father, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Let's go." She even looked pretty. This is a mental institution. Going here, Miranda had imagined a dreary place, with a gray building and a lot of bars on the windows. She'd seen something like it in the movies. But now it was neat. Painted white and decorated with columns, it was spacious enough to look at. Yeah, this place took in more than 1,000 patients. Her father, as if reading her thoughts, smiled. There are not many people here, about 25 to 30 people. It's not a cheap hospital. I know a pub. The rooms are very comfortable. One person has a shower, a toilet, and a TV. Each room even has cable. And there's a library and workshops. You can paint, you can make music. Thank you. So I won't die of boredom here. I thought mental hospitals were boring, but it was her father who took her hand. It's not really a hospital, more like this. But how can I explain it to you? It's a place where you can lie down, catch your breath, get into your wounds, and no one will tug at you, remind you of what happened. And you all the time. Father got angry. "Oh, what are you, an owl? I just want you to recover." "Ah! From what?" "Well, after your stupid wedding." "Yeah, that wedding be damned." And he was a handsome groom. Too handsome for the average person. Miranda had thought so the first time they met. Christopher was not just handsome. He was surprisingly harmonious. There are handsome men who don't make an impression until you look at them closely because their movements are fidgety, their posture is wrong, and their gait is too fast. Or vice versa, and also fails facial expressions. Voice, the very manner of speaking, all that can serve a great service to people with mediocre appearance. All these little things can make you believe that a person is beautiful, even if it is not so. But everything was balanced, everything in its place, and that was why his beauty, multiplied by the ability to hold himself, invariably produced the effect of a burst clapper or a whole shell. Whenever Christopher just appeared in the doorway of any room, everyone in the room froze and turned their heads in his direction. Miranda was no exception. Just like the others, she too froze, struck by his beauty. And then for a long time she couldn't believe that he had paid attention to her. Oh, it was so unnatural. When a man is so generously endowed by nature, he rarely becomes anything. Men like him can choose anyone, and they take advantage of it, shamelessly and with great pleasure. The monotony of the monotonous is repugnant to them. Christopher almost never took a step away from her, and during the whole time of their fast-flowing affair, he kept telling her that he loved her. He repeated that he had never met such a beautiful girl before, and almost begged Miranda to agree to become his wife. "I like him, he to me," said the girl's father after meeting. "I mean, he's got the looks and the brains, but I still don't like him." Don't be in a hurry to choose. Miranda's daughter laughed, hugging her father. "But where does a man evaluate another man?" she said. "Hey, Daddy, I can do better than you." But her father did not want to share her joy. He just rubbed his chin thoughtfully and shook his head, as he always did when he was uncomfortable with something. Miranda knew this gesture well, and therefore waited patiently without saying a word. "You are looking at his beauty, Vitya," said the father slowly. "It will take over the whole world for you. And that, in general, is understandable. We men, too, can go crazy over a beautiful woman. It's all nature, but family isn't just about looking at each other. Answer me this. He's someone close to you. What don't you understand, Miranda? I love him, but he's close to you. He understands you, and you understand him. You know that he will support you even when you feel like you've run out of strength. And that happens in life. A daughter. It happens to everyone. Are you sure he'll be on your side, no matter what happens, that he won't turn his back on you, that he won't abandon you, that he'll protect you from the world if he has to? Well, Daddy, you've got it all figured out, the girl smiled. How can you know something like that in advance? People sometimes live together for 40 years and then only find out the answers to such questions. And you do not always know. I don't argue, agreed the father, but if you're not sure about him and through, it's already now. Is it worth starting? Miranda sighed. You're such a bore sometimes, Dad. You'll have to think about marriage anyway, won't you? Not necessarily, Dad argued. Family is voluntary, and if you don't want it, no one can force you. No, wait, let me tell you. I'll have to think about marriage, because everybody gets married, so they don't have to. And no, Dad, don't interrupt me. I'm not a rebel. I don't want to go against the rules. I don't want to fight public opinion. In short, people like me should get married. But what if you have to? And if no one can give any guarantees, then at least let him be handsome. His children will be beautiful too. That's at least a bonus. But look, my father sighed. A share of worldly truth in your words, of course. There is, but still think. If you want, we'll talk more later. But don't be in a hurry, and don't make decisions hastily.
Now, Miranda remembered that conversation, and regretted that she had not listened to her father's advice. And now what to think about? The restaurant is booked, the guests are invited, the wedding dress.
There it is in the closet. It's long ivory, and that's the name of the light. It's beautiful, as if it were the name of a princess. And Robert? She prophesied all night till dawn I'd be at my own wedding. The terrible blue from under the beauty's eyes. What a princess, Robert, the girl thought with despair. I must remember to ask the makeup artist to cover all the blue. The wedding dress outwardly sat perfectly, and only the bride herself knew that the dressmaker accidentally left a pin in the side seam, and now it's stabbed if you take a deep breath. But in general, if you breathe shallowly, you can live, although not very comfortable. I'm going to get married with a pin in my side, Miranda thought. There was only minutes left before registration, and there was no time to fix anything. Nothing. Right after we were pronounced husband and wife. Ran to the restroom and pulled out that ring. But what's with the registration? All it takes is a few minutes. Worried, the father smiled. He had been watching his daughter all this time, and could not understand why she smiled so rarely. The wedding was the happiest day of her life, and Miranda was looking forward to it, thus planned with such love. His own wedding had been 25 years ago, but he remembered well that great all-encompassing happiness that his beloved was near, that very soon they would be a family, that he was so incredibly lucky to marry the most wonderful, beautiful, kind, small, affectionate, the loveliest girls in the world, and Miranda from the very morning is rushing from room to room, then somehow brought herself in order to the very arrival of the makeup artist. And now, it would seem, that's it. Everything is all ready. Here is the registry office. Now the groom will stop, but she still does not calm down. Nervous, shoots around, eyes, does not find a place. What's wrong with her? Don't worry so much, he said. Now your Stojanovic will come. You don't like him, Pub, for the umpteenth time this day, do you? The girl asked. Dad say. He shrugged his shoulders and grinned. Miranda, I never hid it. But it's not for me to live with him. It's for you. If you are sure that you will be happy with him, don't hesitate to marry him. And if you don't? If not, then take it. Cancel the wedding right now and don't worry about a thing. I'm right here, and I'm here for you. So make up your mind while we still have a couple minutes, then it'll be harder. Miranda sat her lip down. She didn't know what to say to her father. Doubts had plagued her since last night, since the moment she'd taken the white, unsigned envelope out of the mailbox. It was as if something had pushed her. Miranda had no doubt that this message was not for her, but she still couldn't dare to open it. She fidgeted with it, trying to feel the contents. To all appearances, it was just an ordinary piece of paper. The girl finally decided to tear off the edge of the envelope. On the white sheet in big letters was written, "On behalf of the wedding," and that was it. No explanation, no signature. It was stupid. Who would teach such a thing? Who? Anybody. It could be an acquaintance's joke, for example. Or maybe it's some girl who fell in love with Christopher and was rejected by him. Either way, there's no way of knowing. If that's the case, why think about it? It's easier to throw it away and forget about the bills, but easier. But forgetting didn't work for some reason. At night, lying awake, Miranda remembered all the strange things in Christopher's behavior that she had never paid attention to before. For example, he never talked on the phone in front of her, always dropped all calls. Miranda could not remember Christopher ever leaving his phone unattended. He'd even taken it with him in the shower. The few times she'd called, a woman's voice could be heard nearby. Was Christopher really saying he was sitting in a coffee shop, or was it a coworker? But Miranda noticed that the voice was the same. The lady had very recognizable intonations. "Oh, come on," he laughed. Nowadays, there are about 80% of the city's provincials. And everyone has a reprimand. It just seems to you that they all speak about the same. How is it the same if everyone's accent is different? Can you tell the difference between Chinese and Japanese by ear? I don't know either of them. Christopher nodded contentedly. That's what I've been telling you for an hour. You don't know the difference. But it sounds very similar to what you're hearing. So stop torturing me with suspicions. And Miranda agreed. Enough. But there was something else in the groom's behavior that was quite alarming. From time to time, it was simply impossible to get through to him. The caller wouldn't pick up, that's all. Christopher then said that it was some problems with the connection, but it happened with enviable regularity on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And for some reason, Christopher had a few strange conversations with her. "You love me, right?" he asked. "I do." "Hey, why do you ask?" But then Christopher took a long, spectacular pause. He would glance at Miranda and then lower his eyelashes again, as if hesitant to say something intimate. "Were you getting nervous?" The girl. "Don't you love me?" He was smiling. He seemed flattered by her excitement. "Tell me then, is she willing to do anything for me?" Miranda was invariably stumped by this question. "For you? To be with you? You mean?" "Well, roughly. If you want to be with me and I want to be with you, what's to stop us? And if you don't want it, there's no point. If I'd done something bad to you, for example, then you'd forgive me just to be with me." Miranda shook her head irritably. But that's silly, Christopher." "Why?" "Because if you love me, you would never do anything bad to me. Wouldn't do anything that I'd have to forgive you for." "Why are we even talking about this? You could think of anything." Christopher laughed, put his arm around her shoulders, rubbed her head affectionately. "I just love watching you get nervous. It means you really love me." It was all nonsense, of course, nothing worth mentioning. Miranda was used to them and didn't bother. After all, everyone has their own little quirks. Don't we all? And today, on the eve of the wedding, everything suddenly came to mind, made doubts, dreamed, distorted, and grows to incredible proportions, as if born in a crooked mirror. It's an anonymous letter. This is it. The crooked mirror of fierce. The girl really wanted to destroy it. Tear it into 1,000 small pieces. Burn it, and wash the ashes down the drain. It was a good, even great plan. You can't forget what you've read. You can't forget it. Christopher apparently was in no hurry. "Listen, Dad," the girl asked anxiously. "What if he doesn't come at all? Why would he?" "Well, I don't know." He sat and thought about it and changed his mind at the last moment. "Then," laughed the father, Let's thank him for saving you the trouble of divorce proceedings.
But when he saw how upset his daughter was, he realized the joke. It didn't work. Yes, he will come, Miranda, he said softly. Where would he go? A few minutes before the wedding. If he wanted to slip away, he'd do it early. Is he coming? Yes. He looked out the window. There's the groom, I think. He's far away for some reason.
Miranda grabbed her father's hand. Daddy, I don't want to. It froze on her lips. It's too late. Daddy's right. If you wanted to sneak out, you should have thought of it sooner. Christopher did show up a minute later, but I wish he'd
never shown up at all. Christopher appeared before the clear eyes of his bride in old, heavily fitted jeans and a scarlet t-shirt. He was unshaven, shot, and generally looked as if he had recently woken up. And not by himself, but by an underling who was known to never call on time. Following him was a full-figured woman, also carelessly dressed. She had a pretty face, though very tired. She had tied her hair in a bundle at the back of her head, and now, every time she turned her head, the bundle was trying to fall apart.
Miranda noticed that the roots of her long hair had not been dyed for a long time. But the most remarkable thing in this picture was the large stroller that Christopher was rolling in front of him. In this very large, though not very new stroller, 3 babies were peacefully keeping up, the brides. The guests looked silently at the froom, and he was not confused, rubbed with both hands the stubble on his face, smiled and waved, greeting those gathered. "We're out for a walk," he announced lightheartedly. We were walking, and then we passed by and looked at the registry office. A crowd of people gathered, and only then I remembered that I have a wedding today. I forgot about my own wedding. Can you believe it? It's funny. Christopher chuckled and looked around the crowd as if inviting them to laugh together. But no one was in a hurry to join in the fun, and Christopher's chuckle sounded kind of pathetic in that thick, throbbing silence. So I had to go as I was. I didn't have time to change, he finished, but without the bravado in his voice. Christopher could barely make out July. What's this all about? Who? Who is this woman? My wife, he answered simply. Well, she's not my wife yet, but I think she will be soon. You see, we have children, you must understand. And me? You? Christopher sighed. Oh, come on. You're just sorry that if something could be fixed, I would do it. Christopher grinned and shrugged his shoulders. But the heart, my dear, can't help itself, I'm sorry. I thought until the last moment that I could do it, but you see, when Irochka told me about the pregnancy, I was scared. It's such a responsibility then. And I just didn't want to put it all on myself, to drag into my life a woman I hardly knew and with children. And he pulled the tired-looking woman to him and kissed her neck. I realized I loved Lisa and all 3 of our boys. I do. I don't want to part with them, and there's no need. They're my own, aren't they? Oh, what about you? You, Miranda, you're a doll. I hoped I loved you, but alas, you cannot be loved. You're nothing. Very beautiful, really. But that's too little. Miranda looked at this horrible scene, as if it had burst into her life from a nightmare, and could not think what she should do now. The guests started among themselves. But still the beautiful bride in a gorgeous wedding dress is waiting for her beloved and loving groom. And here she waits. The groom is in the registry office, not alone, and not even with friends, but with this fat, unkempt person
And 3 babies. And he brazenly declares in front of everyone that he's changed his mind about getting married.
I have to answer something, Miranda thought feverishly, but she couldn't think of anything sensible to say. She looked at Christopher and for some reason tried to mentally draw a straight line between him and this woman he called Lisa. I wondered if it would turn out to be an even hip triangle or not. There seems to be less distance between him and Lisa. Sorry, my dear, but the wedding is off. She heard it like a dream. Can you hear me? Miranda, hello? Miranda, did you hear me? So Christopher smirked mockingly. Okay, say something to me. To our dear guests. We're all waiting for your reaction. Come on, don't be shy. Miranda raised her head. The square of hypothesis quadrate sur deploy is equal to the sum of squares, she said loudly and clearly. Life in a mental institution is not very different from a vacation in a sanatorium. But that is, of course, if the asylum is good, expensive, and located in a picturesque place. That's exactly what Miranda had. Daddy made sure that his daughter was recovering from the shock under the care of experienced doctors and friendly nurses, so that there would be fresh air around. It wasn't that Miranda didn't want to come here, she just didn't care. If her father had offered her a vacation on the Riviera instead of the asylum, she would have agreed too. But it was even better here. At least she didn't have to figure out what to do with her day. Miranda would wake up and join everyone else for the morning yoga session. It wasn't anything complicated. Mostly they just breathed deeply, changing pace from time to time. 1 inhale for 1, 2, exhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, or vice versa. It's pretty boring, but it's a great way to wake up. After a 20-minute session, we could go to breakfast. It was already more fun here. First of all, because there was no distribution of porridge or melted tea. Everything was buffet and full freedom of choice. Miranda, from boredom, took fruit slices and creamy yogurt, and then laid out on her plate intricate patterns of grapes and necessarily different colors. Center. Then you could surround them with a green circle of slices and an orange of orange. Then you could add a few
slices of banana. Then you got a cheerful picture. If there was a red Seville orange, then the banana flecks were worth removing. The pattern then became darker, but more passionate or something. And at the end, all the beauty was poured with yogurt and eaten in 5 minutes. Stephen the violinist, not in plants, from the neighboring ward, one time closely observed the gastronomic, artistic Miranda.
One day he sat up to her and pointed to her plate. Do you always do that? No, Miranda admitted. Only here is the beginning. It's boring. Stephen shook his head. No, I've been watching you for a long time. You work so hard to create this beauty, and then you destroy it. With what I would call fury. Miranda smiled and flipped the yogurt jar over the green-orange pattern. So the thick white mass softened. A fruity mosaic poured onto the plate. Roughly, the fiddler nodded. Why do you do that? Miranda shrugged her shoulders. It's how things happen in life, isn't it? Sometimes you do a little bit of work and it turns out great. Sometimes you work hard to create beauty. And then someone pours yogurt on it. She pressed the spoon down on the orange. And it's a good thing that yogurt isn't dirt, Stephen remarked. Or worse. Right, so you're understanding? He laughed and pulled a slice off her plate. He looked around thoughtfully before he put it in his mouth. If I had been understanding, I wouldn't have sat there. And where would you be? Interestingly, asked the girl. Well, he gave himself an expressive, dreamy look. For example, on the Grand Canyon. You have been there a long time ago, but I did not like it. The cliffs, the chasms. Ugh, it's so depressing. That's because you can't hear nature, you know? You gotta ride a bike up there with a hot wind blowing in your face. And you gotta be crazy, at least at this point. The Grand Canyon is a point in time. The past doesn't exist. You don't think about the future. What is there to think about then? Miranda wondered. Nothing. You just sit on a sun-warmed rock and drink whiskey. Just make sure it's straight from the bottle. No glasses. It's tasteless in this case. The girl moved her plate to the middle of this table. You want to have another drink and tell me more about it? Where else would you be if you weren't stuck here? More. Well, let's make it Paris. It probably makes more sense to you. In Paris, you can sit on the beach, run around in a sidewalk cafe, drink cheap coffee, and munch on croissants with strawberry jam. Why strawberry? She interrupted. Because I like it, Stephen replied. But wait, this is just the beginning. I'm just starting to fantasize. Here you are sitting in a cafe, and it must be early morning, because in the evenings in Paris, you have to drink absinthe. What if I like champagne? No, we'll drink absinthe like real poets. In a chicken joint like this. And we'll have music, real guitar music, piano music, violin music, so that the tunes mix, so that we want to dance. And we'll go dancing. And how are we going to do something that's so hot? So that they'll forget to drink and only look at us. But that's tonight. And in the morning, coffee and strawberry jam. Absolutely. And I'd watch the people rushing by, waiting for you to wake up. And you'd be right there. Because we're staying in a small 2-story hotel. And our room will be on the 2nd floor. And the cafe is right under the windows. Under the windows will be these boxes of flowers, red ones. Let them be red. You'll wake up and look out the window and help me, and then we'll figure out together how to spend the day. But tonight is a pub, Miranda clarified. That's a must. After all, we have to walk back to the hotel through the narrow cobblestone streets. We'll be walking, swaying, a little tipsy. Yes, but not from the absinthe, but from this crazy music, our dancing, this Parisian night, And said the girl sincerely, I really want it to be worth the truth. To the Grand Canyon with you, I want to go to Paris, and to this joint. Really, Miranda stammered, suddenly settling his impulse. Little did he know what he might think of her now. That musician is a fantasist, but it's just that you were so great at telling it all. Tried to explain something. She what to me? I saw it all right there, like the hot wind and the music. And this morning? Stephen nodded understandingly. A little sadly, yes, it could have been, if things hadn't been different. Miranda muttered, stumbling back to her plate. She felt like she'd gotten the guy to talk about freedom, about her dreams. And it was all the more painful to return to the real world. I didn't mean to. Oh, come on! The violinist waved his hand nonchalantly. We're all here, wounded from it. But for now, he rose easily and walked toward the exit. Miranda looked after him. Stephen was tall and moved as lightly as if he were walking on air. A mop of unruly curls fell over his shoulders. The place was a bore until lunchtime. People settled down in creative workshops. There were several of them. Drawing, modeling, a library where read-alouds were held, and a music salon. You could choose one or the other, or you could go to all the classes. No one forced anyone to do anything here, and that was even the special beauty of it. We just give you a chance to rest and recover. That's what the doctors at this clinic said, and it looks like they weren't lying. Pick what you want to eat, what to do after breakfast. The illusion of freedom. But no big decisions, God forbid, and no real problems. A toy life with its simple and clear rules and cute hobbies. Drawing was most often chosen by ladies of elegant age and the refined cavaliers. Yes, sometimes even here there were novels and formed strong couples. Molding was popular with all ages. To dip your fingers into soft clay, to have it in your hands is pleasant in itself. And if you think of all the things that make you angry, it's a real art therapy. The library was loved by the elderly. They had lived most of their lives without the internet and preferred paper books. And since many of them didn't have as sharp eyesight as in their youth, reading aloud was very helpful. The music salon was a platform for performers. There were few listeners. After all, listening to any music, even the most beautiful, does not imply active participation. But those who liked to play gathered there with pleasure. Miranda didn't have a permanent hobby, So every day she chose where she would go today. Most often she chose a sticky one, tearing off and from a piece of clay whiskey, scraps or soles. Something uncomplicated but cute, like a caterpillar or a tiny bouquet of flowers. But today she chose the library. She had a sudden urge to walk along the shelves lined with books, to touch their spines. Miranda had never been particularly fond of reading, but the sight of a library always fascinated her. She remembered how she had once tried to explain this to Christopher, her estranged husband. "You see," she said, "when I walk into a bookstore, I feel like I am. But like I found a treasure cave. Each book is like a jewelry box in one handful of sapphires, in the other, a long string of pearls. Maybe these jewels aren't my type. Maybe I just can't appreciate them. But still, after all, they are beautiful." Miranda did not know if Christopher understood her. He listened absent-mindedly anyway. "I don't know what you're talking about," he admitted. "But if you want, we can go to the bookstore." Now, remembering the story, the girl smiled blindly. And that's the thing about love. After all, even then it was possible to realize that the groom was not only incomprehensible, but also not interested in what she tried to convey to him and the proposal to go to the bookstore. He probably just wanted to end this conversation. Miranda remembered that she had felt resentful for some reason. "I'm telling you my innermost thoughts," she said with an affectionate reproach. "You tell me to go to the bookstore." Christopher shrugged his shoulders and said nothing. The library was beautiful. Huge windows, deep armchairs and plaids, hot chocolate, cookies and candy, and even its own cat scientist was there too. Black with interesting eyes and white sitters, the cat's name was Felix, and he would walk along the hour from the bookshelves or bask in the sun by the window. Miranda used to come here just to bask in this fabulous atmosphere. Today they were reading aloud The Three Musketeers. Several prominent ladies were listening to the popular novel while lying in armchairs. A serious young man was flipping through magazines and writing something down in his notebook. Felix was asleep, curled up cozily on the red carpet. It had rained after breakfast today. So the cat didn't get a sunbath. Miranda nodded to those gathered and slipped into the maze of bookshelves. Almost immediately, someone quietly called out to her. Why? The girl looked around, but saw no one. "I'm here." It was only then that she realized to lift her head and look up. Tall, with 3. Stephen waved at her. "Climb on me, I'm afraid of heights." Miranda whispered indignantly, but the fiddler was adamant. Hurry up. I'll show you something you won't regret." Miranda, laughing quietly at her own stupidity, climbed up quickly. "Look," Stephen pointed to a hatch in the ceiling. "There's the library archive." He opened the hatch. "You can't even get in here." "You can." The violinist winked and disappeared down the hatch. "Give me your hand," he called after a few seconds. Miranda climbed to the top of the gunnel and peered into the darkness of the archive. A hand. And Stefan easily dragged her upstairs. It wasn't as dark in here as it first appeared. There was a small window in the far wall, and directly opposite the hatch was a transparent door leading to the attic. "Come on." He took the girl's hand again. The attic was amazing. Miranda, stepping out onto it, found herself face to face with a dense wall of rain. The attic room was missing one of its walls, so it was basically just a hard area of triangular canopy. "I'm scared," she whispered, pushing farther away from the edge. "Don't be afraid. Listen." "Listen to what?" She didn't understand.
The rain is song listening. How the drops tinkle as they hit the leaves. How the sound changes as they fall to the ground. Listen. He closed his eyes and repeated even more quietly. "Listen." Miranda obediently began to listen.
At first she thought she could hear nothing but the noise of the rain. But then she began to distinguish different notes falling on the leaves. The drops were really tinkling, as if a small crystal ball was smiling, and the ground muffled the sound as if to swallow it. Papa hovered over his head, the rain pounding resoundingly, as if beating out a drum beat. And then there was the noise of the occurs inside the trees. And Miranda thought of that noise as a basic motif into which others were woven. I hear it, she said, and closed her eyes too. In the war, more tightly constricted her hand. Back they returned already true friends. Do you always hear music? She asked at lunch. Always, and in everything. He hears everything, but he doesn't pay attention. All you have to do is listen. Is that why you don't go to the music parlor? Miranda guessed. You're always like that? Yes, music is all around me. Oh, but you're wrong about one thing. I come to the salon sometimes just to play, to get the vibe. You know, the girl said admiringly. I've learned so much today. I never really thought about how different musicians are from other people. It's a whole world. You live in music? I didn't even know there was such a thing. Do you? He asked with a smile. What do you live in? Miranda lowered her eyes. To be honest, lately I feel like I'm in a void. I'm not like you. I don't listen to. Unless they scare me. I don't see subjects for paintings and a brand. I don't know how to tell stories. So you live in a world of music, and I live in a world of emptiness. And we're both currently living in a mental institution, Stephen finished. Although the joke was sad, they both laughed. Christopher was in a nasty mood. For a week now, the bitch Lisa had been demanding money again. Tonight she'd shown up unannounced, alone and without the kids. Are you posting? She asked, smiling. Christopher blocked the entrance. I won't let you in, darling. I was just about to leave. I have things to do. Lisa touched his chest with her finger. Her fingernails were long and sharp, like stylists. How does she take care of the kids with such a brutal manicure? You let me in anyway, she said calmly. And you know why. So I'll wait for your business. I might run out of patience. Dano. Coldly, he remarked. How long have you been so impatient? Lisa, not paying attention to his words, without undressing, went into the room and sat comfortably in one of the armchairs. My legs began to get tired, she complained. It was my habit to tighten my shoelaces tight. And then after a dozen meters, everything starts to squeeze. She threw off her shoes and threw her bare feet on the coffee table. Christopher wrinkled his nose in disgust. Sit down like a human being, he asked. This isn't a Wild West tavern. And you're not a cowboy either. Lisa agreed easily. Every cowboy was entitled to a horse, as I recall. But I'm a horseless cowboy. That makes me sad. I wish someone would help me with the money to buy the book, but she never cleared the table, which finally pissed off the owner. He leaned over and jerked the table far to the side. What the hell do you want? He was indignant. Isn't it enough that I've already unbuckled you? Lisa smiled dreamily. You know, with 3 kids, it's so uncomfortable to ride public transportation. People are so angry, pushing and cursing, saying we're in the way, and no one will give up their seat. That's how I ride. I suffer. But I have to get around the city somehow. So call a cab, Christopher snapped at me. You don't have to suffer. Cabs are terribly expensive, she sighed. And not every driver will take us. 3 babies isn't like carrying a dog in a carrier. I thought, and realized that without a personal vehicle, we are all dead. I'd like to buy a car, even a used one. But first you have to go to driving school, get a driver's license. And all this is so expensive. And then there are exams in the traffic police, insurance, and only expenses. She shook her head contritely. There was so much in that gesture, as in all her intonations. Naively, that Christopher across the board wanted to nail her. And you want me to pay you for all this? He clarified through his teeth. Did I hear you right? right? Well, you're a smart guy. You know what you're talking about. If I say no, what then? Lisa smiled again. This time a cheeky, triumphant smile you can't say. Unless, of course, you're sick of living. Christopher puckered his lip hard, to the point of bleeding, turned away and spat. He knew it was the truth. The goddamn truth, which he had created himself and which he was dying to fight against. Fool, what kind of fool am I? To hell with you, he said without turning around. I'll get you the money in a week. Good girl, gentle on the muzzle. Lisa, I never doubted you. Get out already. I'm leaving. He heard her go to the door. Open it. But then she stopped, like she just remembered something.
I'll give you 3 days. A week won't do, but only because you're a very good left-handed boy. Make it 4 days before the door slams shut. Christopher, left alone, slowly walked over to the desk and with one kick returned it. Lisa walked outside and immediately pulled her cell phone out of her pocket. It was already bursting with incoming messages. Apparently, she would have to call back right away. She pressed the call button with a sigh. The sigh didn't sound tired, as she'd planned, but rather happily enthusiastic. But after all, didn't she have a reason for that? He'll do anything, Lisa said as soon as she was answered. Home, she was in no hurry.
She walked on, leisurely looking at the cars passing by and thinking about what kind of car she herself would like to have. Well, first of all, spacious, so that in the trunk could fit a stroller, and in the cabin, 3 car seats. Then you definitely need a great security system. And also, of course, to be inexpensive to maintain. Best of all, a new one. From the showroom. But could Christopher get that kind of money? But then Lisa remembered again what trump card she had against this small and stubborn boy. And she smiled cheerfully. Nothing. He'll find the money. He'll find it and bring it in his teeth, huh? By the way, I should tell him how much money I need to find. Lisa quickly punched out the message and smiled even more cheerfully. Imagining the look on Christopher's face when he read her text message. How did you not realize that for every scoundrel there's another? Even meaner, Christopher, when he saw the amount Lisa had sent him, gave a short and angry howl. He ran around the apartment, smashing everything he could get his hands on. Fucking bitch! Fucking bitch! Pretending to be a bitch. And yet she seemed so battered. Modestly. She was afraid to look up the bastard. Who's he then? Miranda loved that attic where she'd once heard Rain's music. She'd been going up there ever since. No one could say if the doctors or the other patients knew about it, but at least no one gave her away. And the attic became the girl's secret hiding place. Often when she climbed up, she found that Stephen had beaten her to it. Usually he sat there with a book, or just lay there, putting his hands behind his head and gazing up into the sky. The sky, the attic. And dreamily the young man laughed when Miranda saw him. You know, this place looks good on you. You look terribly spectacular. Just take it immediately, falling in love. The violinist sat down and smiled slightly. He was the only one who could smile with the corners of his lips. But this smile made the surroundings immediately become brighter. But he didn't look like a girl looking for someone to fall in love with, despite the fact that the eyes from under the attic with wonderful young men. Come here, sit down. He patted the vacant seat next to him. The girl sat down next to him, crossing her legs in Turkish. You've certainly noticed that, she said. I don't want to fall in love. I don't want to fall in love at all. Miranda, joining in, gazed into the musician's face. You always notice things accurately. I wonder where you come from. How observant are you? And a good judge of character. And you're not very old. I look at you and I don't understand. Are you even human? They say vampires stay young forever. He laughed and held out his hand to her. I'm warm to the touch, and you see, my skin is ordinary, like everyone else's. When I'm cold, the fur on my hands becomes frizzy, and when it's hot, sweat comes out. If you scratch it, it leaves a mark. No, Miranda, I'm definitely human. Observant? It's a quality that most creative people have well developed. We're trained to recognize these nuances. Why don't you tell me this? Why does such a beautiful young girl suddenly not want to fall in love? Did someone hurt you badly? Miranda shrugged her shoulders. No one really, but there was this asshole. It was my fault. I should have been more careful who I messed with. I lost my mind a little, and I didn't see much in his beauty. Such a fool. I fell in love with a picture and that's it. Put out the light, call the orderlies. It happens, Stephen said philosophically. Beauty has the same effect on everyone. That is, it blows your brains out. Yeah, that's what my dad used to say. Here we were going to get married, and I was already on the giggle stood in the registry office in a wedding dress and waited for the groom. And he didn't show up! He did. How? Smiled the girl sadly. He came, and not even alone, but in a very interesting company with this one. She showed with her hands the approximate dimensions of a fat woman and 3 children in a stroller. Come on, distrustfully stretched out the violinist. Don't tell me that these are his children. Imagine he stated exactly that in front of everyone, that the 3 not in a stroller are his children, and the fat lady, the future wife. That's the whole story. Of course, Daddy kicked him out and everything. But, I don't feel like falling in love after that. Is that why you're here? He asked you quietly. You felt really bad then. Miranda shook her head. No, it wasn't that. No, Dad was afraid I'd get depressed or something. But really, I think it was his cunning plan. He just wanted to hide me from this, this fiancé. I mean, he's not going to get me here. I think Dad was afraid of what if he did. I don't even want to say his name anymore. If that Christopher guy came on to me again, I might melt. Can you? The girl waved her hand. I don't care if you say that. Even now it seems to me that I did not love him. I loved a picture of him, just him as he is. I didn't love the real one. I didn't even know him. And now I don't want to find out. It's just a bunch of bullshit. It's just stupid. It was probably the most pointless thing I've ever done. I see. Stephen nodded. I see. Miranda looked at her friend. For some reason, he'd gotten lost. He was distant. You're not here right now, the girl said. What's wrong? Nothing, he said, getting up. Come on, dinner's coming. I don't want to eat a tooth. I want to sit here with you. I told you everything. Okay, now it's your turn. He grinned. There's nothing to tell, it's just me. I got kicked out of the Vienna Symphony Orchestra for love. Abundance, that's how. From my earliest childhood, my character was characterized by 2 main traits of love for music. And this determined my choice of profession and the need to be loved. And that's why I was kicked out of music, by the way, in disgrace. Because you wanted to be loved. You could say that. In fact, I had a shameless orgy with 3 violinists and a pianist. When this came to light, exactly how I can't tell you, because that's a separate story of my shame that became part of the overall lie. All right, I'll tell you. The pianist had a buddy whom she dumped because he was busy alone, took her around the commission for a whole month, and never once bought her or himself anything. At first, the girl could not understand why he was dragging her to look at the interior decoration of these wonderful stores. Only afterwards did she realize that he was doing it to wait out the rain without spending anything. It was a very rainy spring in Vienna, So this squeak was our colleague, when he noticed that I was doing all sorts of crazy things for a violinist. Yes, I bought her cappuccinos twice, and once I even treated her to apple pie. Listen to this. When he noticed the eye, he was naturally jealous and demanded an explanation from the girl. Well, she explained. She said that overly frugal men weren't her type, and she liked them much better. But basically, that she liked me.
Our colleague behaved with the utmost restraint on the tour-installed cameras in my hotel room, videotaping. And let's face it, there was a lot to see. I got on the desk of a favorable elder, on whom a lot depended. I was called on the carpet.
And this dry old man, first of all, shook my hand and swore that he had never seen such a thing in his life. He expressed a word of admiration, but then pointed me to the door. Do you see any logic in that? But he couldn't give you a bonus for setting you up, even though he admired your prowess. Good for you, Miranda suggested. Yeah, that's right. That's sanctimony. That's what I told him. I had to go home, and I started drinking on the plane. An anxious dad rushed to meet me at the airport. Then we talked about our meeting. It was talked about for a long time and even, I think, written in the newspapers. So you're famous? Yes. For classical music fans. Eyewitnesses said that Dad threw my lusty body on his shoulder and carried me through the crowd like a sack of potatoes. Already in the parking lot, I regained the ability to move, but my mind had not returned to me.
They said that I tried to break out of my dad's arms and run away towards the duty-free, yelling something about cheap whiskey. So my dad had to knock me out and almost shove me in the trunk. It was humiliating for me, but very effective for the people around me. They loved it. Some of them, I think, even applauded, but I vaguely remember that.
That's how I made the last part of the way to my parents' house in the trunk of Batman's car, clutching the violin case. Returning to my native land was a challenge for me. After Vienna, after great music, to suddenly find yourself in your own room, where you left without looking back, to become a legend. I succeeded, by the way, albeit in a somewhat alternative way. But anyway, the goal was achieved, right? I was trying to figure out what to do with my life next. The options that came to my mind, they were so heroic and beautiful. For example, retire to a monastery and spend the rest of my life in humility and sketching. Or at least become the most outstanding violinist on the planet, so that the good, imaginative prudes from Vienna would realize how wrong they were. To crawl after me, begging me to forgive them and come back to the orchestra, and to have their violinists, trombone, cleaner, or a pianist, yes, and pianist. Right and left, they were giving out interviews, bragging about the fact that they managed to get into my bed, not forgetting to point out the undeniable fact that I, as a man, have no equal. But all these were very complicated options, and I wanted simplicity. So I decided to go on a bender. For some reason, it seemed to me at the time that it was the only thing I could do. Alas. And then I was sorely disappointed. My body did me such a nasty trick that I still can't forgive it. It turned out that my body is capricious and doesn't take much booze. Miranda couldn't stand it and woke up laughing. In general, this circumstance upset me terribly because on a sober head I did not live at all. So I wanted to go out the window, but again, no luck. My caring parents caught me at the last moment. He hid, didn't he? He didn't take into account that my apartment would be located on the first floor of this attic. But I still come here to exercise my will to live. Well, you're happy. Now, she had already laughed, and now she suddenly thought that Stephen had not really said anything funny. On the contrary, it was all very sad. And the worst of it was that it was quite possible that he had not lied a word. Life can be such a surprise sometimes. You don't even see them in the movies. Listen, she decided to ask after all. What about all that stuff you just told me? Is it true? No. Now let's go to dinner. Is it true? Say it. Come on, Stephen. That's not fair. Okay? He held out both his hands to her. I will if you kiss me right now. Get off! Miranda resented him, but she wasn't really angry. She had gotten to know her new friend a little bit during the week, and she couldn't be angry with him, especially since he was probably fooling around. What a creative person. I'll kiss you, but only after you tell me everything. I'm fine. Okay, let's go eat something. The bastard sighed sadly and got up too. All right, let's go. But you promised you'd tell me? I'll write a letter. The violinist promised. Christopher angrily threw the phone away from him. It'll probably break. And to hell with it. No time for that. It was the third bank to deny him a loan, which meant he couldn't get money fast enough. But if he looked across the room and the clamp hit, it was scary to even think about. And so it took Christopher a few minutes to talk himself down like a cranky, frightened child. Look, no, you listen to me. It's just thinking. Thinking isn't doing it, but already, please, let's just think. Christopher finally managed to calm himself down. Fuck it. He didn't have any choice anyway. If we sell his apartment and also try to sell the car more favorably, then just the amount of money the bloodsucker needed. It's a sure thing. But he'd still be on the street. What choice does he have? If he picks up his cell phone quickly, make sure he's alive. And dialed Lisa. Listen, beautiful, I've been thinking about something. Don't interrupt me. Only speak when I ask you to, okay? Shut up, smartass. Answer me. Do you know how to drive? How long have you been driving? I'm going to driving school, she said lazily. And Christopher, for some reason, imagined that now she went to bed. All three of her back gnawed, and she herself lay down next to them, hoping at least a few minutes to nap in peace. Only Christopher showed up and broke her raspberry. Nothing. The life of an adventurer is full of surprises. Let her get used to it. Then listen to me carefully. I will. You can pour yourself a cup of coffee while I explain the obvious to you. Now, you're going to have to rack your brains and put your brain together. Done. Then I'll go first. You can't drive, which means you need a car that's safe to beat up. Yeah, don't give me any arguments. I won't listen to you. It's got to be something used. I want a new one. That's because you've got no more brains than a chicken. A new car stops being new as soon as you roll it out of the showroom door. It loses 10 to 20% of its value. And you'll want to sell it at some point, won't you? I'm not answering that. I know what's true. You're willing to lose 20% of its value just because you want to get fancy and buy a new car. Second, you don't want an expensive car. First of all, you've damaged it, and that's pathetic. Secondly, that the car needs to be repaired from time to time. And an expensive car and repair requires expensive. Do you have money for it or not? Don't answer that again. I know that you do not have any money, which means that there will be nothing to fix your buckwheat. Lisa's indignant message rang through the phone. And what are you offering me? She was offended. Ride bicycles with the kids? No, Christopher grinned. I'm suggesting something that would suit you. Of course, if you could understand anything I said. But what kind of option is that? Lisa asked in a sullen voice. 1-0 in my favor was Christopher. Now, maybe I won't be a bum. That's a great option for you, he hummed. Look, I'm ready to give you my car. Which, she gasped, but Christopher didn't let her continue. I said don't interrupt me and take what they give you. Don't be stupid. My car is in perfect working order. It's perfect for the city. It's only 5 years old. You know, that's no age for a good car. It's junk. I wouldn't buy it. I'll give it to you and pay your tuition. Just think fast. I've already got 2 buyers for my car. There's a deadline. You have to think about it. I'll keep it till tonight. But what's the point? Just make a call. Stop, Lisa screamed. Stop, don't hang up. I agree. But good for you. He allowed himself a discreet smile. You'll come back tomorrow, and we'll go through the whole thing. Goodbye, baby." When Lisa had passed out, Christopher sank heavily to the floor. His hands were shaking as badly as an alcoholic with a hangover. The car was nothing. He'll get another one. In the meantime, he could walk on his own 2 feet. He'll still have the apartment. It's the apartment that counts. Miranda woke up early in the summer. She never knew how to sleep for long. She was up at 06. Yeah. Daddy laughed, saying that she, like nature itself, wakes up according to the sun. And so it was. All the evening before, she had sat in the music parlor listening to Stephen fiddle. There were no other visitors there, so he played for her, and the girl listened to him with pleasure. Stephen could improvise and did it skillfully and to the point, so that his improvisations embellished the tunes. And Miranda, looking at his now so spiritualized face, thought that if they had met earlier, she would have fallen in love, not as she had fallen in love with Christopher. Then she had seen nothing but the outward appearance that overshadowed everything. But she had never been as easy and fun and cozy with him as she had been with Stephen. Christopher was an estimable arrogant, and around him she could not relax.
One had to always be beautiful to match such a partner. You couldn't do something stupid. Or did he laugh at the top of his lungs? No, just a mysterious silence and a slight smile. You couldn't listen to the rain and draw pictures of
Fruit slices on plates. It was pointless and strange. And doing meaningless things and being weird was not for the wife of a man like Christopher. It was only now becoming clear how tired she was of trying to fit in with someone she wasn't at all happy with. And with Stephen, it was very different. He didn't judge, he didn't look down on her. She could be in front of him and be sad and giggly and chatty and nonsense and strange. She was always interested in him. And there was enough beauty in him. Not fantastic, but different, earthy, and light. She wanted to respond to his smile, to rest her head on his shoulder. He was alive and real. Alive and real. And his music was just like himself. A stream of sounds that one wanted to return to like warm blankets. How he seemed to notice her excitement, winked, and played something bright, gypsy. Miranda began to sit up and dance. Stephen is a great violinist, after all. In the morning, she found a letter on the windowsill. On top of the envelope was a small bunch of wildflowers. Miranda gingerly reached for the envelope. Lately, she had developed a strong dislike for receiving letters. "I promised I would write to you," Stephen wrote. "Remember that time in the attic when you asked me to tell you why I was here? I didn't dare. It was awkward. I mean, you, unlike me, have had a real accident. And I want to tell you that whoever he is, your failed fiancé, he's a fool. But don't take offense at him. He's punished himself. He's hurt you and the woman he decided to stay with. Personally, I have no doubt that she doesn't want him now. Why should she? It's better to raise children alone than to waste her time on a traitor and a coward. But I'm sorry. I got distracted. I'm just stalling so I don't start talking about myself. But what can you do? I have to. I'm here, Miranda, for no reason. It's just that my dad owns this place, and I just hang out here every now and then, like a kid at summer camp. It's nice here. Nobody bothers anybody. But I was ashamed to tell you that. I'm sorry about that. I'm going home today, and I'm honestly sorry to leave. You may not believe this, but I don't want to leave you. And I can't even say goodbye to you because I don't know how to look you in the eye. I've been lying to you. I'm sorry. I'll be glad if we meet again, huh? The last line was crossed out.
Miranda grinned and tore up the letter. Why had he done this to her? Well, he was vacationing here. So big deal, he should have made a big mystery out of it. And what's more, who asked him? Go away, because she needs him so much. And for some reason now, she remembered his wonderful colors of the sea on a cloudy day in the eyes that flashed so easily at the table, and how she wanted to look into them again. At the bottom of the sea lay treasures, pirate treasures.
And at the bottom of his eyes lurked a smile. Stephen, I wish I could stop him and hold him. I wish I could talk to him. Gone, I seem to be getting used to the loss, thought the girl gloomily. And Christopher is now without a car. He's fine. Lisa, it seems, finally satiated and stopped sucking blood, nerves, money out of him.
It would be possible if... Of course, to sell the apartment, move to another city, get lost. But that would be the ultimate cowardice. And he had made this mess himself. Christopher closed his eyes, and it was like he was in front of a screen. He is 10 years old, and he is sitting in a corner because he is scared. Dad's in a bad mood again today. He's yelling at Mom. He's been yelling all the time lately. At first, Mom cried and made excuses, but now she doesn't cry anymore. She yells back, and Christopher is scared that they will kill each other one day. He's 17 and he's packing up to move to a neighboring town. He'll have a job there, and for a little money he can rent a room. Room, of course, is too loud, a name for the hole offered to him by his new acquaintance Lisa. But what to do? Nothing better is on the horizon. Prices are going up. Yes, it's a nice room, the girl persuaded him. It's a bit small, yes.
But you're going to spend a lot of time here. You'll come to sleep, that's all.
Right. What difference does it make to you? There's no bed, but the couch is alive, it's long. If you spread it out, you can sleep across it. Look, he looked around the room again. It was so tiny. It looked like the walls were about to move. How did you even get this apartment? I mean, whose is it? My grandmother used to live here, Lisa said. I think she was allocated an apartment from the factory. But in the 90s, she got scammed by realtors. She wanted to trade her apartment for a bigger one, with extra money, of course. So they promised her, and then they underpaid her. No apartment, no nothing. But friends and acquaintances gave a penny to help her buy this magnifying glass. But my grandmother didn't complain. She was happy about it. Then, when she was gone, the apartment passed to me. Now I rent it out for pennies. What else can you get but pennies? Where do you live? With my boyfriend, she said carelessly. He has a one-bedroom from his parents, but it's bigger than this one. So what are you taking? I'll take it, Christopher agreed. As a matter of fact, he had no choice. And now he put his things in a travel bag and thought about how strangely life works. After all, he had long dreamed of getting away from his parents' house, where the eternal scolding and the gray, landscape outside the window, where it is always cold and no normal food in the refrigerator. So he's out. And the joy he'd been waiting for and hoping to experience is gone. No, on the contrary. The thought of possible difficulties, and the fact that now it will be up to him to solve them, because he had grown up, and he hadn't had time to be a kid. His parents noticed his departure only after a week. Before that, they sincerely thought that the son is mistaken at some beauty, and they were full of bright hopes. If the guy has a place to sleep, then he found a girl with an apartment. It gave them hope that he'd go away and rid them of his silent presence. It wasn't that they didn't like him at all, it was just that they didn't like us either. Each other was hard to stand. They were always fighting over nothing. And every time it turned into such a huge scandal that they were disgusted. Christopher never interfered or even commented, but it was much more embarrassing to fight in front of him than in private, in the presence of a third person, even if he was their son. Or maybe it was the other way around. This made them feel even more acutely their powerlessness, to agree with each other and to create at least the appearance of a quiet life. When the parents found out that Christopher had moved out, they calmed down. He was alive and well and seemed to have even found a job and a place to live. So everything was all right with him. Once in a while, he sent small sums of money, but he never came to visit. He preferred to keep his new address a secret too. He didn't want his past life to intersect with his present one. But clearly remembered Christopher, he was already 23 years old, independence from which you do not know where to go. Ambitious dreams suffered one defeat after another. Christopher did not become a millionaire, did not buy a crystal palace on top of a mountain, did not become a star of the screen. He didn't even move out of his office room, for which, incidentally, the rent had gone up. Everything seemed hopelessly tired and agonizing. It was this impenetrability that became the darkest time of day, after which dawn comes. It all started by accident. Christopher pulled a photo project. A girl I knew. She was an aspiring photographer and was preparing her graduation project. Christopher readily agreed. It was a great opportunity to make a name for himself. He was by then desperately tired of working in movies. But here again, unlucky shooting in the studio was fun and easy. But after watching the resulting footage, both Christopher and the photographer once twisted. After all, everything was going just right. They were almost at the goal, and suddenly it turned out that the camera loves not everyone. Christopher is the one she just plain hates. All his beauty, all his charm was gone. Once he was in the lens, this disappointment in himself so knocked him out of his rut that he sat in his room looking out the window for days. And then Lisa came in, recognizing his distress. She only shrugged her shoulders indifferently. So what now? I'm in trouble, too. Nev is a genius, go to any atelier, and you need models for the showroom. There's a picture. Don't do it. Walk the runway. Walk the runway. Christopher was staring at his landlady. Why hadn't he thought of it himself? 2 days later, he was already standing clothes demonstrator in one trump by the standards of their town together. It was an atelier, which was not only engaged in individual tailoring, but also had its own outlet, a real boutique showroom and other attributes so coveted by all Dolce Vita tuxedos, casual business suits, cachet show. Christopher became an instant local celebrity. He was able to move at ease as if he was born in these expensive clothes. There was a certain aura of wealth and easy carelessness around him that helped him overcome any obstacle. Of course, it was only an appearance, an illusion of pure water. But this illusion, which helped to attract new customers, Christopher learned to create masterfully. Rumors about the extraordinary beautiful mannequin quickly flew around the city, and the boutique filled crowds of people. Mainly to gawk at the handsome man, of course. The prices in the store were high, but these curious people still bought something. Sales increased significantly, and Christopher even began to receive. In general, the owner of the boutique never paid interest on her models, but she realized to whom she owed an increase in profits and worried about how Christopher would not be rebought by competitors. Christopher has already quite quickly realized what the reason for such generosity, and realized that this is his chance to get out of poverty. Now, every day, he mentioned all the new lucrative offers and was sure to try to make sure that these conversations reached the ears of the owner, and she, more and more, fearing for his own well-being, raised his salary. A year later, Christopher managed to get a small apartment of his own. For cars did not have to pay at all. The owner of the boutique made her best employee a birthday present. Yes, at the age of 20, Christopher seemed to have the most beautiful life. Maybe it was so, if it was not for the new year, on which Christopher's father decided to freeze in a snowdrift. He had to drag himself to his hometown. Christopher expected to see a grief-stricken mother, and as something already morally tuned to the fact that he and only he will have to organize the funeral. But Mom, much to his amazement, felt fine. At last, this long-standing nightmare is over. That's all she said. And, noticing her son's shocked look, added, "Don't think I don't feel sorry for my father." "Didn't you just say that, Radha? I am glad," tiredly explained the mother. "That all this shouting, reproaches, scandals are over. That no one will no longer grate on my nerves and throw tantrums. but I feel sorry for your father. He lived poorly and died poorly. Is this because of John? What John? John who? Mom grinned. It's an older story, older than you. John is love. My first love. He was 2 years older than me, and he didn't notice me until later. Yeah, me too. And then one day I went to a friend's house to get my notes. We were all living in the dorms at the time. But I see John sitting there. And then something happened. I don't know, as they say, a spark ran between us and it just burst into flames. 6 months of cuddling, when we ate, when we slept, I can't remember. Love fights. Because of our permanent existence, his schoolwork went to hell. Ended up getting expelled. John was taken into the army, and I lay on the bed for a week, crying. The tears seemed hot at the end. So she ran her finger along my cheek. Tears ran, and it hurt me, as if it burned. My neighbor's girls gave me Pasternak. John wrote me letters at first, and then for 6 months I didn't hear a word. Not a word. Not a word. I thought he'd never write again, but he did. He said our love was over. And he'd met someone else. He'd met a beautiful girl, you know, and everything was wonderful. And he wished me not to be sad, but he also wrote that first love passes, and that soon I will meet someone who will make me very happy. Is that all? Not quite, answered the mother. Sadly, your father, he lived in the same dorm with us. He knew John well, and he had been in love with me since my freshman year. When he found out John dumped me, he rushed into action to win me over. I honestly didn't care, but it was nice not to be alone. 2 months later, I got pregnant. Your father's all happy. But he would have realized that I was caught, and I'm not going anywhere from him. We got married, we had a normal life for a while, and then he started to freak out. You were 2 years old? My dad was baptized on us, saying he was the only one working for the family. I'm just sitting at home. And then he didn't care what he blamed me for. He was bending over backwards, so why didn't you get divorced? I never understood it. Mother shrugged her shoulders. You don't know where we live. Here everyone knows each other by sight. If I had gotten divorced, my father would have told the whole town such stories about me that they would have stopped saying hello to me. So I had to put up with it if it wasn't for John. How did his life turn out, by the way? He married the girl he wrote about. Married, Mother nodded. He had a daughter, Miranda Mom. That, I don't remember what happened, but they divorced. Well, divorced and divorced. It was just a matter of time. Miranda's a big girl now, probably a year younger than you now. What happened to him then? It was like a haze, like an obsession. John, it was all his fault. It's because of him. He, Christopher, has no memories of his childhood except parental squabbling. He's the reason it wasn't hard to find this former son, now John. And having an affair with his dumb daughter is easier, but what girl can resist the bright appearance and vows of eternal love? They all read romances for Durians, which are all like a copy of the dazzling beauty. Innocent maiden handsomely, passionately in love, ready for all affairs. Does not want to show reciprocal feelings. But in the end, everything still ends. With a wedding. A nice, entertaining read, but the girls all want to be in love, like in the novel. There was a final court to throw the fool in front of witnesses, preferably right in the registry office. And that was the end of my revenge plan. Lisa came up with a new idea. She used to call Christopher occasionally just to chat and see how he was doing. Christopher had long ago moved out of her apartment, and now she herself lived there, which she had given birth to her boyfriend. The boyfriend, by the way, turned out to be a good one. He evicted Lisa and the kids, but they've been dropping money in and out. Did you visit? What was his motive? Who knows? Christopher thought the kid just didn't want to lose his airfield. When Lisa heard about the upcoming wedding of the former tenant, she got very excited and threw questions at him. And Christopher himself did not notice how you blabbered to her all about his childhood, poisoned by scandals, about the death of his father, and his mother's first love, John, and his grown-up daughters. And most importantly, about the revenge plan. It seems to me, he confessed, that we will settle accounts with this family, and then let go of all my childhood, which was not that rape. That my fear when parents threatened, I could do nothing, you know? Hey, why don't we just do it right away? Lisa suggested it. Let's go there together and take the kids. Say they're your kids and I'm your fiancé. It'll be cool. They'll all get caught, so we'll have fun. Christopher liked her idea for its absurdity. What Lisa was proposing was a real horror. And that was exactly what was required for the best effect. The effect, by the way, was deafening. Deafening! In their silence, the guests just looked away. And the bride's father, the same former John, briefly remarked, "You should go now, Christopher. We heard you. All the best." Christopher never felt his triumph. He had expected screams, tears, turmoil among the guests. Everything was so cold and completely unemotional. Christopher felt like the grief of a pyrotechnician who promised everyone a terrific fireworks display, but found that the whole show had fallen apart. In short, there would be no fireworks, and nothing at all but inarticulate hissing and smoke. It's a shame. Lisa, on the other hand, didn't seem to think their plan had failed at all. On the contrary, she, unlike Christopher, held herself up as a winner. She had felt all the right things and all the wrong things. "Christopher," she said, before they had even left the registry office. "If my friend finds out what we've done, how do you think he'll act? Why would he know?" Christopher wondered. Lisa shrugged her round shoulder. What about it? Why? How can I hide something from the person I love? You mean I'm going to get punched in the face? I'm afraid, Lisa sighed, that this won't be the end of it. If he finds out, he'll kill me. What kind of man can bear that? Especially if he finds out that his woman has been molested. And who were you? Naturally, Lisa smiled sweetly, but I think I can calm him down. There's a very good sedative, but it's so expensive. And I have money, And so the epic began. Lisa first needed money for the sedatives, then a new closet and a stroller for the kids, then tuition at a driving school and a personal car. Christopher realized that after the car, Lisa would need something else. What's more, now it was not only she herself who made the condition, but also her lover, who was only too happy that Lisa had unearthed this gold mine. The only thing left was to move out of town. Yes, let it be cowardice, but cowardice. Prudence often walked alongside. Until a few days ago, it seemed to Miranda that it would be a pity to go home. But now that Stephen was gone, there was no reason for her to linger either. Her father carefully stowed Miranda's suitcase in the trunk, then opened toward the car door in front of his daughter. "Are you glad you're going home?" he asked, getting behind the wheel. The girl shrugged her shoulders. "I don't know, Dad. I don't seem to miss city life. I got used to the silence, to nature. And on the other hand, I can't see all this splendor anymore. If you want." My father suggested it. "Careful. You can stay here a little longer until you feel ready to come back." Miranda smiled gratefully. "I'm ready. Dad, let's go home. You better tell me all the news. How you're doing? What's good in the world?" "But," Dad laughed, "there's no good news. Only two. One, Christopher got out of town. I have no idea where, but I sincerely hope he never comes back here." Miranda nodded enthusiastically, agreeing with her father's opinion. But she didn't really care about Christopher, the geography of his movements, or even the possibility of his return. That story was forever in the past. So why bring it up? You said there were 2 pieces of good news, she reminded her father. But the first one had already been dealt with. What about the second? I'd say the second piece of good news is romantic. Every night there's music outside our house. Some young violinist comes in, always at the same time, takes out his violin and starts playing. Fiddler. What? You said violinist, and I didn't mishear you, did I? Fiddler. Fiddler? That's right. I once asked him who he was working so hard for, and the guy plays very, very good music, improvises, knows how to convey a mood. So, I asked him, who is he trying so hard for? And he said for me, and Miranda guessed. That's right. I explained that you're away for a while, but you'll be back soon. But this weirdo keeps coming every night and playing. You don't know who he is? I know. The girl smiled and leaned back in her chair. I know. And you know that Daddy is probably the best news of all.
Miranda covered her eyes and felt the longing and anxiety leave her soul. Everything is going to be okay now. There's this road right here that loops but leads to home. There is this car that goes soft and fast, because behind the wheel is Daddy. There is Daddy, a man she can trust 100%. He won't hurt her. He won't leave her. He will always protect her.
And at the end of this road, Stephen and his music are waiting. What will happen when they meet? No one knows. Probably just the end of this road and the beginning of the next. Huh? Roads never end. But right now, Miranda, I didn't want to think about the future. The road leads home. Her father's there, And very soon she would meet Stephen. What else is there to dream about?